Garrett Wilson is an immensely talented player. We saw that on display in 2022 when he won the Offensive Rookie of the Year award despite catching passes from Zach Wilson and Mike White all season long. He was primed for a breakout in 2023 with Aaron Rodgers taking over as the starting QB for the Jets, but sadly, Wilson wasn't able to reach his true potential when Rodgers suffered a torn Achilles in week 1 of the season. But with Rodgers set to return from his injury this year, does that make Wilson a prime candidate to take the leap into stardom? And should we be fully buying into him for fantasy football this season? Today, we're going to be taking a look at Wilson's fantasy outlook for the 2024 season to decide whether or not he could be a league winner in this revamped Jets offense. Real quick before we get started, if you want a full fantasy football draft kit with 250 player rankings and notes, as well as full in-season support for your start-sit questions, team grades, and more, make sure to become a member of Fall Ball Fantasy for the low price of under $1 per month. Join by becoming a member of this channel using this button right here. Now that we have that out of the way, let's get back to the topic at hand. The situation for Garrett Wilson has been absolutely awful for the last 2 seasons. He's been catching passes from the likes of Zach Wilson, Mike White, Tim Boyle, Joe Flacco, Trevor Siemian, and Chris Streveler. The man has never had a competent quarterback throwing him the ball at the NFL level. But despite that, he's still gone for over 1,000 yards in each of his first 2 seasons and even won the Offensive Rookie of the Year award in his first season. That's miraculous, and that's a very strong testament to just how good he is as a talent. For 2024, his situation is obviously getting a lot better with Aaron Rodgers now that he's the starting quarterback for New York. Even if you want to say that Rodgers isn't going to be as good as he used to be, it won't matter. Even if he's just average, that's still an insane upgrade for Garrett Wilson, and that'll be reflected in his fantasy numbers. With the offense set to be a lot better, Wilson should improve a lot in one category in particular: touchdowns. He had just 3 of them in 2023, and he had only 1 throughout the last 15 weeks of the season. That's absolutely insane. And that's not because he's not a high touchdown type of a player, that's simply because New York's offense has been so unbelievably bad over the past 2 years. Outside of a major injury, there's no way that Wilson doesn't see a major increase in his touchdowns this year. Along with that, Wilson is still easily the top receiving threat on this team, even with some of the new bodies in the wide receiver room. The team brought in Mike Williams and Malachi Corley this offseason, and while that would seem like some negative competition for Garrett Wilson, neither of them pose much of a real threat to him. Williams is coming off of a torn ACL and may not even be ready for the start of the season, and Corley is a mid-round rookie that projects to play more of a gadget role in the offense. There's no reason that Garrett Wilson shouldn't hit 95 or more receptions again this year, and with increased efficiency and touchdowns, that could lead to some absolute fireworks for fantasy football. As part of the downside case for him, many would point to the fact that the Jets offense might not be as good as we all think it'll be. And I have to admit, there are a lot of variables at play for this team. The health and age of Aaron Rodgers, the health of Mike Williams, a whole new offensive line that's never played together. There's a lot that could go wrong between those things. But in my opinion, there's no possible world that it's worse than it's been the last 2 seasons. Nobody disputes that Garrett Wilson is a good player, but the main problem that exists is his price. You can't get him at much of a discount this year, despite the fact that he didn't even finish as a top 25 wideout in 2023. He's currently being drafted as the wide receiver 8, but in most leagues, you'll have to use either a late first round or an early second round pick on him. That's too rich for a lot of people, especially considering that we haven't seen him finish as a top 20 wideout over the course of an entire season yet. He's currently going above players like Jahmyr Gibbs, Jonathan Taylor, and Kyren Williams, all of whom have proven that they can be an elite fantasy asset. So I have to admit that the price is really high for Garrett Wilson, but I still think it's a fair price overall. I mean, there's a clear teardrop in wide receivers after he goes off the board. The next guys up in ADP would be Marvin Harrison Jr., Devontae Adams, and Drake London, and I would be more than willing to pay up to get Wilson rather than one of those guys at a slight discount. If Aaron Rodgers and Garrett Wilson both can stay healthy for at least most of the season, I see no way that Wilson doesn't finish as a top 10 wide receiver. He's already proven that he can produce under terrible situations, and now he's primed for a huge breakout with the first good supporting cast of his entire career. I'm comfortable taking him at his current ADP, and I think that many fantasy managers are going to share that sentiment, especially as we draw closer and closer to the draft. Thanks for watching this video. If you want to see more content like this, be sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you never miss a new drop. Thanks for tuning in, and until next time, goodbye.